Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is David Carr of Steward Your Business. We're at the Business Roundtable Podcast here today, joined with some great colleagues. Just to give you a quick background, David Carr, Steward Your Business here. I focus on organizational health, team engagement. I help other small business owners and their teams. And so we have a great topic tonight that's going to be facilitated by Dr. Curtis Cochran, which we'll come back to in a moment. But before that, I want to have Bill Hatch introduce himself this evening. Go ahead, Bill.
Sure. My name is Bill Hatch. I am a leadership guide and podcaster. I have 3 podcasts I do. 2 are called YWL Online, where we bring biblical topics into the modern world. And the third is a secular, just general interest interview and roundtable discussion, not too dissimilar from this, called Not Quite After Midnight. And then I also do teach leadership under the banner of Triple Braided World.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. And Charlie Chen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Awesome. Thank you for having me again, David. So my name is Charlie Chen, the cybersecurity specialist of the group here. And I work as a Chief Experience Officer for Intelisys. We are a managed security service provider helping small to mid-sized businesses protect their livelihoods, deliver that peace of mind, and also that world-class hospitality experience that you would expect from like a Ritz-Carlton, for example, but within the technology field.
Awesome, Charlie. Thank you. And we've got our special author and guest facilitator, Dr. Curtis Cochran. Go ahead, Curtis, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Curtis Cochran. We are a mergers and acquisitions firm specializing in our E4 system. And tonight we're going to be talking about culture. Mm-hmm. And as David said, I wrote a book, a colleague of mine, Mr. Boyd Wools, and I wrote a book, it's been about 2 to 3 years ago, and it's The Winning Culture. And when we were talking about the topic tonight, I thought winning culture, and then I wrote a book. So tonight I want to ask my colleagues here a couple of questions, and feel free to respond to however you wish. Now, this first question is kind of interesting. When somebody asks, what is business culture? What does that mean to you, gentlemen? And I'm going to start with you, Bill. What does that mean when somebody says, what is business culture?
Well, business culture is the combination of personalities, written rules, and unwritten rules of conduct that people combine to create the way that they tend to do things, and business wide is what I would say.
That's good. Charlie, how about you?
I would say it's definitely what Bill said, and also most importantly, stemming from the mission statement, the company core values, and just the overall mindset, in terms of mentality that basically the company and each of the staff embody. So that would be what I would define as the company culture.
Good. David?
I like what you guys both shared. Yeah, it's the sum of all these individuals as part of this organization. You have, like you said, Charlie, a mission or a vision, but it's what's really lived out on a day-to-day basis by that organization. And so culture, whether I like how you said it, Bill, some of it's written out and it's very clear. So a lot of it is not written. It's just kind of understood. And so it's developed over time, and it's not something that stays static in my experience.
That's good. Now, let's say that you're listening to our talk here, and you're starting out. Maybe you're a young entrepreneur. Maybe you just started your own business. What would be some of the first things that you would address your culture at the beginning? I know that we've already talked about how it evolves, but what would be the first thing that you would actually address your culture and what it would look like? David, I want to start with you.
That's a great question. I think as a business owner, the culture is surrounded partly around who are you serving, what's the environment you're going into, because that's vastly different. And so to me, it was just for my own sake, when I identified my avatar, my ideal client, that was really important, because I have to know and communicate values and relate. And if I can't relate to that ideal client, I'm not going to be very successful. So that's where I started, Curtis, is like, who do I want to serve? Who do I like working with? Because that's the kind of people I want to have in the organization that I'm building. That was important to me.
Yeah, that's good. Bill, how about you?
Actually, I think I'd go with something Charlie already mentioned, and that's the mission statement. The mission statement is ideally supposed to say who we are as a company at this precise moment in time. And I think I would slip that in front of who we want as a customer, although it could certainly include that. Probably should. But yeah, I would think the mission statement would be the first thing I'd recommend coming up and writing down.
That's good. Charlie?
He's thinking intently. You're still on mute, Charlie.
Can you hear me, Charlie?
Oh, he may have trouble hearing us. We'll have to come back to you, Charlie.
We can come back. We can come back to Charlie. All right. It looks like he might have froze. Yeah. These are good answers. Now, here's the next question. And this question is, I think about this all the time. And let me step back. And, when I go and I work with businesses, we talk about mergers and, and the acquisitions piece. When it comes from, all cultures are different. You go from one culture to the next culture. They're all going to be different. And each one of us that's here tonight, I'm sure that we've dealt with cultures that are really dysfunctional, and we of course dealt with cultures that really made us better employees or better managers or better leaders. So what I'd like for you to actually tell our audience, each one of you, and I'll start with you, Charlie, if you can hear us now, is tell us a little bit about a company or an organization that you were with that you really didn't like the culture, and one that you actually did like, if you had either one of them. Charlie, we'll start with you.
Nope, he's having difficulty, I think, connecting.
No difficulty. All right, we'll give him some time. Bill, how about you? We'll start with you.
Well, actually, I'd probably have to say that the business side did not agree with the culture. I actually quit in quite a his AirPod died. And it was a car dealership, and which quite often have very negative cultures. And it was very much a top-down culture. Do as we say, and we don't want to hear anything to the contrary. Even customers were treated negatively. And I ended up quitting immediately after the owner's son yelled at one of my clients, and who had just purchased a car. And I made that statement and left immediately. That was it. No 2 weeks notice or anything. As far as great company cultures, wow, that's a tough one.
Got to think about that one.
My own culture, no.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, my own solopreneurship has the best culture. I let myself get away with murder. No, no. I am still seriously developing exactly what I want the business culture to be. As it being one person at this point, it's just me. That's my culture. But I will be taking the bits and pieces of good culture that I've encountered over the course of time to put together the culture that I want to have as I expand my business.
Now, do you find, Bill? Do you find? And I love both your answers here, but we were talking about belief systems and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that the cultures that the culture you experienced with the car dealership? Do you feel that it was, say, that the belief systems themselves were out of whack, or it was just because it was top down, it do as I say, not as I do kind of a thing, that kind of rubbed you differently?
I think so in many ways. Of course, your core beliefs will tend to, as a business owner, will tend to permeate the culture of your business.
Right.
And so you gotta be careful about that. Make sure that you have a positive and just a positive belief system, that something that is supportive of other people and and doesn't prefer to tear down.
Yeah, good. David, how about you?
Sure. I'll start with negative culture where I've had is where you are being. I'm all about being. I'm positive where you're positively supporting folks, like what you talked about, Bill. I think that's really important. Oftentimes, where I've been negative culture is where they're really pushing, just challenging you, and they're not providing you a lot of support. So where an element of this where I felt frustrated or struggled with one time as I was newly overseeing a group, and just this is the aspect of culture where they told me, hey, come up with a sales plan, but I had no background as to like what to look for, but there wasn't the support there in order to get it done. So it was like, do these things, but yet I'm not giving you the guidance, not giving you the support in which to do that. And when I asked questions, I kind of got crickets of like, well, what about this, that, the other thing? And so it just made me discouraged, as like, I want to do a good job, but I'm not getting the resources there, or feeling like not really being heard. So that was the negative side. On the flip side, the positive side was where we created a culture of communication and vulnerability and sharing. And I was a part of a leadership team, and I felt like we could talk about things without fear of retribution or fear of like, I don't have all my stuff together, but that's okay, because we've created this culture of like, we're on the same team. We're going to work together. We're going to help do this together. And so I really appreciated that. On the same token, that team, if after a couple years later, it eroded a little bit. So it doesn't, like I said, it's not set it and forget it. It does, if you're not intentional about it, even the great cultures that you can have can change over time. So it didn't maintain that as much as I would have liked to, but at the time I was really thankful for that company and that transparency and camaraderie.
On that second one there, David, did you decide to move on to a different company, the one that you liked? Or...
Yeah, they went in a different direction myself than it wasn't necessarily my choice, but they went in a different direction, and that was okay. It was just it was a different move, and there was different people that came into play, and the culture changed because there was different leadership, and they had different objectives and values, candidly. And so it shows you how quickly things can change. You see this why companies bring in, right, CEOs or other things are like, it's not working. We want to change up this culture. It can be for the better, but it also can go for the worst.
Good. Okay. Charlie, did you get a chance to get the question? Do you know the question?
Yeah, I believe just sharing an example of a culture that didn't work or work as well, or maybe even toxic or detrimental versus one that was a standout.
Sure.
Right? Is that the gist of the
Correct.
question? Okay, cool. So
yeah, what stood out for you? What's a good culture, Charlie?
yeah, well, I guess I'll start with the what doesn't work, and then I'll come around to what does work. So what recalling from my past work experiences, what really is detrimental to culture and creates toxicity is there's a lack of moral compass. And what I mean by that is bending the truth, saying white lies, and because I predominantly I was involved in sales and marketing early on, and that never works in that aspect, because then you're setting yourself you're setting the company up for failure because you're over promising and under delivering, and so that definitely does not work and creates toxicity. And the other thing is, I think somebody said it, not leading by example, like do as I say, not as I do. That doesn't work either. So those are the two biggest detrimental things, like not having a moral compass and not leading by example. And then what works obviously is having those, and also just being able to have a focus on the canine mentality. So cane, like CANEI, canine. That's from Tony Robbins. It's just constant and never-ending improvement. And so, like you had mentioned, David, it's not a stagnant thing. It's ever changing, ever evolving, because that's the only constant is change, right? So that's kind of a paradox, but like you constantly have to reevaluate as things, as the work landscape and the social landscape changes. You have to adapt and stay ahead of the curve. So I think just having that flexibility and openness to look at and reevaluate, hey, we have this currently as a core value, or this as a statement of how we want to be and how we want to show up, but maybe we need to revisit that. So just having that openness and having that flat organization where nobody feels intimidated to voice their feedback, that's huge. And so that's been that's the type of culture that I'm involved with now, and so I think that's a good recipe for a winning culture.
These are all good. These are really good. I mean, the good and the bad, let's say, and I'll tell you, it made me think so much about the companies that I have seen. And Bill, I'll take a page out of your book. I played college athletics for forever, and I was sports and whatnot. And I still remember that our head coach, he had a system, and that system was that the seniors and the juniors would get an opportunity to start up until probably December, kind of before we started our season, until his son became a freshman. And then he changed that system. So you can only imagine the culture and what happened and how upset many people were. And so it kind of leads to my next question. How big is the issue or the problem? when ego comes into play from leadership? And I'm going to start with you, David. What's your thoughts on the ego when it comes into play, when it comes to culture?
Oh, that's a great one, and it's funny. Timely. I have my own other podcast I've promoted to here, but I'm going to be launching that coming up here. And my episode was just talking about help or hindrance, Curtis. And I think when your ego gets in the way, and you think you have all the right answers, and you kind of come around there, you think you're actually helping, or in reality, you're doing actually hindering your team. And the ego comes in, and people start to shut down. In my experience. And you actually lose productivity and engagement because the business owner has such an ego, and they have to check themselves and really ask the question, is this working or is this not working? But oftentimes they can't get to that point because of the ego, unfortunately. It's a barrier for them. And you really will win when you're humble, but there's truth to the saying, pride comes before the fall, unfortunately. And that's where you see a lot of businesses fall and teams fall, because the pride is there. So if you can't get checked by your team or others, by creating that for yourself, and that's why I appreciate all of you guys, because we come in ways that we talk about what's working, what's not working. We ask for that. We actually say, bring it on, because we know we'll be better off. But oftentimes business owners don't have that maturity, and they let the ego take over.
Yeah, that's good. Charlie, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you get into a situation where you're dealing with egos, that's where the dysfunctions of a team kick in full force. And there's actually a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And so those 5 are absence of trust. Number 2 is fear of conflict. Number 3 is lack of commitment. 4 is avoidance of team accountability. And most importantly, last one is inattention to team objectives, because it's not about the team anymore. It's about the ego, right? And feeding the ego, which is not going to help with a winning team culture.
That's good. I like that. Bill?
Yeah, a big ego can be a big barrier to success. We see it in very successful people. Sometimes they get a huge ego because of all they've accomplished, and all they do is surround themselves with yes men and people who will say, "Oh yeah, whatever you say is a great idea," and whatnot. That's one of the. It's such a primary force in against success that humility is actually the first thing I try to instill in people when I'm teaching them how to be good leaders, how to be ethical leaders, and because especially because if you think you know everything, then nobody can teach you anything. So I'm out of a job if everybody suddenly thinks they know everything. But yeah, humility can be a huge boon to success. Because it allows new ideas to flow in to the primary decision maker, and and growth results. So.
I like that. And you know what? You said something there that hit just on the heels of our next topic. And you said something about leaders and how does a culture, this question will be back to you, Bill. How does a culture create or develop leaders, in your opinion?
Well, starting with that humility, accepting the input of others is definitely a huge part of that, because it leads to the support of those who give good ideas. The person who has a good idea, who's supported, might feel that they could become a leader, and then they'll seek out the opportunities to do just that. Creating opportunities to lead by creating teams within the organization, and even if someone decides to leave for a leadership opportunity, to be supportive of that. Because you certainly want people who have good feelings for you out there in the wider world. Being supportive of someone who leaves the organization in order to find a leadership opportunity that you don't have available for them, of course, will come back to you, because at some point you may need that person to get you into that business.
Yeah.
And definitely encouragement and support are the biggest things I think a business can do to develop leaders.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things that I wanted to point out as well, and Charlie, we'll get to you next on this question, is building that business is building a business. If you're an entrepreneur, build that business so that you can leave it, meaning that you're teaching you're teaching people how to duplicate yourself. And that's kind of what I was getting at. Charlie, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, my take is you got to try to find people that can make give you the option to fire yourself from the company. And so the way you do that is by just looking for rock stars only. And so, how do you determine rock stars? First, you obviously measure people. You're always recruiting, always putting out feelers. But at the same time, you're also wanting to make sure they're a good fit, right? So you have to have your core values figured out, so that way, when you do the interviewing process, that's what you're interviewing for, and hire tough. And so make sure you interview 2-3 rounds minimum, with yourself, with your team, with somebody who's most intuitive, that's within your decision making, your executive team. Obviously, if you don't have that many people, but you still want to have multiple people to really get a sense of if it's a good fit. And from there, then you manage easy. So hire tough, manage easy. And like you said, you want to be able to set it up so that you can walk away from it and come back and the business is doing just fine, if not better than when you left it. Because if it's all reliant on you, then you don't really have a company. You just basically bought yourself another job that's even more miserable than any other job that you could have gotten as an employee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is you want to hire rock stars and get out of the way and go get their dry cleaning. That's the goal.
Good. I mean, that's good. David, how about yourself?
I would say I hear what you're saying, Charlie. I'll say, it is nice. Rock stars are good, but you have to have the team too. Make sure that they all work together and they have that mentality. There's a great TED Talk, and I'll post it in the link here. But it was talking about how if you're not careful about this and you're not getting somebody that is quote the superstar at the expense of others, they can actually bring the company down. So you want to make sure that everybody comes up. But that comes from what Bill talked about, and too is mentorship. It's training the next level below you. So as a business owner, what you're saying, Charlie, what I heard you say is like you need to delegate down, empower those other believe you that you don't have all the cars, you don't have everything in there, and then that level below you do the same thing to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. I don't think, unfortunately, in my experience, business owners spend as much time as really is necessary in order to do that, to get to that place where they could step away, Charlie, and so they're what we talked about ego earlier, like I've got the answer, I'll fix this, I'll do it, and so they're not delegating down. I like this imagery of an orchestra, right? If we have an orchestra, you can see everybody's got their parts to play, and you're the business owner, you're the conductor, right? But if you go to try and play everybody's instrument for them, there's nobody conducting the orchestra. No, I got to go fix this. No, I got to fix this. There's no the organization, and it won't function well. So you need to empower and have them do the best that they can in their positions. And so I think it's super important that you are mentoring and training those below you. You can kind of call it a discipleship model, if you will. But the point is, we're trying to get those people, and then they go on to the next folks and the next folks and the next folks. And it needs to be that culture. If it stops at a certain level, you got problems in the culture, because it's got to go from the top from the top all the way down to the bottom, and you need to continually realign that. But I agree with you, Charlie. The goal is that you could walk away from the company. And Curtis, I know you know that with your mergers and acquisitions. You do not want it based on the business owner. You want this to make it run holistically as much as possible, not based on a couple individuals. So, yeah.
If I may interject real quick, there's an old saying that comes to mind: "Be indispensable, not irreplaceable." If you're irreplaceable, then you're never going to be able to move up and out to bigger and better things at any level of a company. From the bottom up, and but of course you want to be indispensable to the company because you want them to value you. But if you're irreplaceable, then you're stuck wherever it is you happen to be. And so you need to create your own, within the systems that you have control over, to make them in such a way that they're repeatable, that somebody can come in and fill your shoes, and then you can move up up to a different position in the company with more responsibilities, or to go and move up and out to the golf course if you happen to be in that position.
That brings, I had another question, but Bill, you just made me thinking about another question, because we talk about beliefs and egos, and we've talked about all of those things, and what's interesting to me is, and maybe you guys could shed some light, and of course, Charlie, we'll start with you, but why do you think that people, you think the reason why they're afraid to help the people up the ladder instead of kicking the ladder, but helping people, is it our insecurities? Is it our ego? What is it that's keeping us from, helping people? And I'm only thinking about this because when the 49ers and Joe Montana and Steve Young were playing together, they would not talk to one another. Their egos were large, and Joe Montana just didn't want anything to do with Steve Young. What I'm wondering there is our egos, are we afraid to lose something? What is it you think is keeping humans away from helping others, lifting them up through your culture? I'll start with you, Charlie. What do you think that's all about?
Well, definitely the root cause, from what I've seen, is this, a scarcity mentality. So thinking that if I help somebody out, then that's going to take away from me and my opportunities and my value. And that's really not the case, unless that's the filter that you project onto the world. Then of course you're going to find and collect all the evidence that's going to prove you right. And so ego it's super detrimental, because then for those that want to create more freedom and more success in their business, right? Yes, it takes you like minutes or seconds to make a decision or go do something that it would maybe take 10, or it actually takes 30 times. It's 30 times harder to make it into a process that can be repeatable by somebody else. The E-Myth talks about it, right? Where you have the McDonald's model. If you have the process so clear, you can plug in a high school student and they can do it. And that's the challenge, right? It's that much harder to processize it, but that's the path to your freedom, is being able to set aside your ego. So like, if it needs to be done right, I need to do it, right? That's the whole ego mentality, and that's the scarcity mentality as well. Is like, hey, if I have helped somebody else do this, then what am I here for? You're here for the bigger picture, and you're here to create more opportunities and growth. And so I think that's ultimately the root cause, is that scarcity mentality.
Yeah, I like that. David, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, we have fears, like you said, Charlie, whether it's rational or not. It's just a part of our human experience. And so if we can understand that, we can make better choices. But oftentimes, I love learning about how the brain works, and we've got different components in our brain, and there's certain areas where it's just kind of this fight or flight area, if you will. And if we're not, and it passes, it actually goes pretty quickly. But if you just react in the moment, it is negative. But if you can sit with it and process it, and those, I think that if they can do inward reflection, Curtis, and really get at what is in processing that, you can overcome it. But I don't think a lot of people don't take the time to process that and do self-reflection, self-development. It's much easier to blame others, to be a victim. And so it feels empowering in the moment. It's not, but it feels that way. You can, well, this person's a jerk, or this thing is this situation, or this, that, and the other thing. They're all deflecting, because it doesn't mean, that means I don't need to look at myself. It doesn't mean I have to look at what I contributed to this, because you might find some things in there that you don't like, honestly, when you look at it. But it's much easier to deflect and get frustrated and look at others. So I agree with you, Charlie, on that mindset side of things. And if we can go to that deeper place, years ago when I started my journey, I think I'm going to mention this on previous podcasts, but I had to learn how to manage myself, how to lead myself. And that's truly one of my passions, why I even started my company, is to help folks peel back that. But it does take somebody that's gone and done that before. It's really hard to do it on your own, in my experience. It just is.
A lot of work. Yeah, a lot of work. Thank you, David. Bill, what's your thoughts?
Well, Charlie definitely hit the nail about on the head there. But yeah, it's something that I've studied a bit in my interests in game theory and economics. You can see it. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the prisoner's dilemma, where two prisoners are given a choice to remain silent or rat out their partner, and people are always afraid that their partner is going to rat them out, and so it's like, I better get him before he gets me. We don't live by the golden rule out in the real world. It's not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's do unto others before they do unto you. And so we're all making that Faustian bargain, and the deal with the devil, and it's really detrimental to everyone if we do that. Definitely it's all about changing that mindset and getting people to give before the whole play it forward mentality that we have in M&O, to give to others regardless of whether they give to you.
Gentlemen, I'll tell you, I really appreciate each and every one of you. This topic, I think it's easier to manufacture a product or develop a service than to deal with culture, because there's just so many different variables, moving parts to it. There's really, I wouldn't say that there's a right answer, but there's a right direction for sure that each of us go. What's your final thoughts, David? I'll start with you. What's your final thoughts on a winning culture?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Curtis. I mean, it comes down to intentionality, like you said. It's unfortunately, I wish it was easy just to say it naturally comes out. You can bring great people in, like you said, Charlie. That's key. But it is something that you curate and you constantly have to look at and see and evaluate what's working and what's not working in your organization, and be ruthless about rooting out the things that are not working, like weeding a garden, if you will, because it's true that they say that one bad apple ruins a bunch. It definitely can, and you can start a great organization, and unfortunately, it can come to a quick demise if you're not careful about it. So it is important to make that. I think why we created this podcast and this conversation really is that we can we're sharing an abundance, that we want others to know this. And I would encourage those that are listening, reach out to any one of us here, because we all are passionate about this, and you can learn more about how we've used it in our own businesses and our past. So really, I just want to encourage you to be intentional, look at it, evaluate it, and keep coming back and seeing, is this working or not working? And if it's not working, reach out and get help. Look outside of yourself so that you can have others come in and speak into it and get healthy. The sooner that you can get healthy, if you recognize something's off, that's when you've got to make the change. Don't delay, because you're only doing it your demise. So I encourage you and take action today.
Very good. Yes. Bill, your final thoughts?
Yes. Act now, not sold in any stores.
I like it.
No, I would say, it's like, yes, you can do what you can to hire great people who will who have the knack for these things, but I gotta say it's going to be training. Giving people the knowledge constantly. Practice, drill, and rehearse, as one of my old trainers used to say. Looking at his thesaurus, but yeah, I would definitely say to keep pumping. The well's not gonna pump itself, so you got to do it.
Good. Charlie, any last thoughts from you?
Well, the most important takeaway here is making sure you have that paradigm shift, because Albert Einstein said this, right? We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. Mm-hmm. And so when we come from that scarcity mentality, it doesn't give us any new possibilities. And so when you shift from scarcity to abundance mentality, then you just acknowledge that there's not a shortage of money or resources or people. There's only a shortage of ideas. And so how to do something is none of our business. It's going back to what David said, being intentional, right? This is not easy, but it is simple. It's not easy because human beings, we still have the same wiring in our brain as the Neanderthals, right? Where it's fight or flight. It's take the path of least resistance, because any moment we might have to really kick in full gear and full adrenaline for our survival. But we don't live in caveman world anymore. Now it's about, like, instead of just taking the path of least resistance and reserving that energy, that creative energy, for those fight or flight, life and death situations, we have to force that upon ourselves and be intentional and look at what is the vision that I want to create, and then the how-to is you're gonna go and figure that out as you go. But just having that mentality, that paradigm shift of just knowing that, hey, there's never a shortage of money, there's only a shortage of ideas. So come up with the ideas, begin with the end in mind, and then go out and get the people that's going to help you figure out the how.
I like that, Charlie. And add to that is we don't, even everybody that's on this call here, we don't know everything. And we're going to make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up for doing that. And it's trial and error. I mean, we've all been there, and we've seen the pluses and the minuses. We've seen a strong culture, a weak culture, dysfunctional, you name it. So I just want to, add that you're going to make mistakes. Just like you said, David, I think you said intentional. Be intentional, and know your mission statement, know your direction that you want to go, and then find a way to get there. So thank you again, gentlemen, for joining me on this call. And David, thank you for inviting us again. And I look forward to next week's talk.
Definitely. I'm going to throw up here real quick the book so you guys can see that that Curtis has written, Winning the Culture Game here. So check that out. We'll make sure a link is in the show notes here. But thank you guys. It was a pleasure getting to see all of you again. Until the next time, have a great evening. Take care, guys.
You too.
Great night. See you guys.